What's up, team? I don't know if anyone's even watching these videos, but I'm going to keep posting them because I said I was going to. I don't have a whole lot to add today about the book because we're still in the process of reading, and so there's not a lot I can add to these questions for this one because they're more just kind of how do you think about it and what are you thinking, blah, blah, blah. But there are a couple of things that I wanted to respond to. Number one is I noticed a few people pulled the same passage as one of note, the line about no one rose in Packingtown by doing good work. I thought it was interesting that idea stuck out to a couple of you. I think Maisie mentioned something about it being comparable or making you think about the situation we're in now where people are potentially cheating on online tests and having to kind of do things on the honor system. It is, as a side note, when I was in college at UNC, everything that we turned in, we had to sign an honor code. So Blue Books actually had it on there where it had an honor code and you signed it. Whenever we turned in papers and stuff like that, you had to write a shortened version of it, which was, "On my honor, I have neither given nor received unauthorized aid on this assignment." And then you signed it. And I think every now and then I'll do that for my classes because I feel like having you put your name to something does kind of make you feel accountable, hold you accountable and stuff. So anyway, side point on that. So the other thing that I wanted to mention was Matt mentioned that reading the book as kind of through the lens of public health can get monotonous. And I think I see what you're saying by that. It's not like every detail of the book, I want you to think about it through the lens of public health. But one of the things that I do want us to kind of pay attention. So Sinclair said something in the years after The Jungle and after all the furor about the kind of meat production industry and the passage of the Food and Drug Act, which then led to the Food and Drug Administration. I think he said with this book, he was aiming for the nation's heart, but he hit it in the stomach. So you're right, Matt, in that this is intended to be a kind of a socialist call to arms, right? He wants a kind of a rising of the proletariat, so to speak, against the Gilded Age. If you go back and you look at the kind of the Gilded Age, the age of the Rockefellers and the Vanderbilts and the Carnegies and the Fords, all these people who created these massive industries, but did it with these really problematic, from today's perspective, labor practices. He wanted kind of workers to assert their rights. And while that's I think a lot of the details that he adds in this book that did gross people out in terms of the food that they were making, I think he was intending them to serve this larger goal of showing us the conditions that the workers were in. And kind of maybe unsurprising for Americans, the readers kind of took to heart more what affected them, which was the food they were eating and where the food they were eating was coming from, rather than what was happening to the people who were producing the food. So, if you think about it in terms of his kind of revolutionary ideals, it really doesn't work the way that he intended. But on the other hand, if you think about public health, even changing the working conditions and stuff like that will improve a kind of a larger public health. So I'm not necessarily wanting you to see every kind of point of this through a lens of public health, but I do want us to be thinking more about the kind of the implications for public health, both for the characters in the novel and what they go through and some of the practices that lead to the situation that they're in, and then also the kind of the larger industrial side of public health. And then also, as some people did, thinking about it today. So one of the things that we actually, I don't think I mentioned earlier on, but if you think about this as being an old, 100 years old, it's not quite as relevant. There are more safeguards and all that sort of stuff. There are still food kind of production documentaries, exposés like Food Inc., there was another one that I saw mentioned somewhere, but things that kind of talk about the mass production of food, particularly meat, the pork, beef, and chicken, poultry industries, and kind of the horrific conditions that the animals are kept in, and then the processes of slaughtering and cleaning and packaging them. So they are still very relevant, maybe not to the degree of there might be people in your food, but in terms of other regulations, there are still issues there. A couple of other things. Will, I liked your line where you pointed out the germ of hope in their heart, and you focused in on the germ there. And I think that's actually really interesting, because I think the traditional way of reading that, and the way that I've always read it, is the germ of hope growing in their heart. So germ there referring to like vegetation, like a plant sprout. And so the germ is the little first part that comes out of the seed. If you've ever had a piece of garlic that sat too long, you start to get the green thing that's coming out, right? That's the germ. So I think that's more specifically what he meant. However, germ is used in this book in terms of contagion and things that cause disease, because he talks about germs affecting people in the kind of on the killing floors and in the industries. So there is a kind of double use of that word, and it's interesting to think about the distinction between how that word is used. So if the way that you're reading it, germ of hope is hope is kind of a contagious thing, and you can see the hope. It never does die. It kind of moves on, and they're kind of keeping it. The whole kind of hope springs eternal idea. I like that. I hadn't thought about that before, but I think that really works, and that's an interesting way of reading that word germ in there. It does put a little bit more optimism into that, kind of marrying it with hope, which is not the way that I read it. So maybe that says something more about me. So the other things that I like, that a few people went back and actually looked at the PDFs of the original publication. So when it came out in a serialized version, I was interested that Alexis, I think you said, because it did come out one chapter at a time, that actually made you nervous that it was going to be more shocking later on. I'm curious about why that is. Why does the fact that it came out just one chapter a week make you anxious that it might get even more shocking? I think that's an interesting point. I will say that it's been a while since I've kind of read through this all the way, and I'm enjoying it too. I did also want to mention, I think it was also Alexis, you mentioned in the past you've been assigned selections from this rather than reading the whole thing. And I think this is an important point, because reading selections of things only gives you, as you say, those small snippets, and they don't give you the context in which that comes or tell you anything about what the larger book is about. And so I think it's important to actually read entire works rather than just seeing selections from a work, because you really don't get a sense of what that scene that you're reading is doing in the larger context of the book, right? Or even the larger context of a chapter or a section or whatever. So selections can be good for emphasizing points, but it's kind of like misusing a quote, right? If you take a quote out of context, you can easily change the sense of it or the intent of it or anything. So I like that you've appreciated kind of going back and reading the whole book and recognizing that the book itself is not quite as bad as the sum of its parts, right? So I think that's really great. Okay, so thanks to all of you for your responses. I've been really pleased with them. Don't worry about technology issues. I know, Kieran, you had some problems with technology. That's totally fine. Sophia, I think yours cut off too, at least the one that was on there already. It sounded like you might post another one later, and that's totally fine. But thanks for all that you've been doing. I will talk to you again soon. If you are looking at these and you want more videos from me, let me know and I'll do some more. Otherwise, I will see you guys online later.